Welcome back to the Boomer Mill. Today, we're going to discuss why we fled the United States.
And we ain't woke. We're just at the wake.
Run free and dive into the sky. Hear the wind crying out its prayer. Why are we so ashamed to be alive? Break the chains and our freedom's ours to take.
Welcome back to the Boomer Mill. If you're here, you've probably felt it too. That sinking feeling that something is deeply wrong with America. We're here today to tell you why we made one of the most difficult decisions of our lives, and that was to sell everything, donate basically everything that we had and owned for generations and move abroad.
We didn't just wake up one morning and say, hey, let's move. It took years of physical, mental, emotional, and educational even decisions before we decided that the momentum was against us and we needed to get out of the way. And the only way to do that was to put physical, emotional, intellectual, mental, and every other type of distance between us and the country that was now negatively affecting us on all of those levels.
And if you've seen our previous videos, for us, it became completely unbearable when we lost our home to a guy who had 20 felonies on record that was helped by a family member who lied to the insurance company and cost us, now that we're looking at the numbers, we had to pay $67,000 to get rid of a house that was appraised for $460,000. So just do the math there. That's how much we lost in the last year. That's what our CPA was able to dig up. Then we moved our stuff into a storage unit, which was then burglarized by a guy who took all of Jonathan's family guns and then used them in crimes up and down Pierce County. So if you've seen our previous videos, along with what we were dealing with in our new apartment, the crime, the cars going through buildings, all that stuff, that's why we moved. It was just complete unmitigated chaos where we were living. And we lived in a very, very nice area. It's the Redmond Bellevue area in Microsoft territory with highly skilled tech workers. So it was a complete shock to us to have had to go through this. The police did nothing, the insurance companies did nothing. And it was a big wake-up call for us that if we stayed, we were sitting ducks.
And the only way to really deal with that was to put, again, that enormous distance between us and all of these things that were affecting us constantly. It was one of the more wrenching decisions that I've ever made, and I know Michelle has ever made.
So let's talk about sanctuary cities, because that's where we came from. So the area that we came from was considered a sanctuary city. It's Seattle, Bellevue, Redmond area. And for the longest time, since the 80s, it has been a tech hub. We've got Amazon, we've got traditionally Microsoft, Google, Nintendo, and we moved up there because we worked in tech and we were Google contractors, and we connected a lot of small businesses to Google services and helped them optimize their businesses and get in front of clients. So it was a really great place for us to run a business and to be part of a really thriving tech community. And we had everyone from immigrants to American-born citizens, all educated, certified tech workers. And we'd go out and walk our little dog Rosie and Fox at the time, and we would have conversations about, oh, you're using Python for that, or hey, how's your self-driving car program going? And oh, Amazon merged with Google on that? That's so neat. What are you guys working on? So we were able to go out and just talk tech with people. There were even families that we would meet up with. And remember Anela, she actually helped me with Python, that coding, yeah. Mm-hmm. So it was just, again, people from all cultures, Southeast Asia, China, Europe, America, and we were all working together on a common goal, which was tech. And I would say that during COVID, we saw a massive shift in the type of people that were moving into the area. And there was a, what would you call it, a concentration going on, because we would see maybe a family of 3, possibly 4 max living in a 1 to 2 bedroom. And it went from that to 12 or more people on mats who did not really seem to have a lot of tech skills, certifications, education, and they never really left their apartments. And they would come home with, groceries, driving expensive cars, and it just didn't make any sense. So, we were once seen as this like beacon on a hill when it came to tech, when it came to like bringing the best and the brightest into our area. And it turned into a slum. And again, I support immigration, but this just didn't make any sense. It brought in a lot of crime. It brought in a lot of confusion. A lot of the people that we were working with were literally pushed out of the area because the rents doubled or tripled in some areas, and they didn't match the income that we were making in tech. And it just didn't make any sense.
And the media spins this as though these are just isolated incidents. It happens in every community, but when every day you're stepping over needles and seeing your neighbors pack up and leave to another community
or country,
or
a lot of Indians moved to Canada.
And when something happens and you do have to call the police, they basically say, "Oh, we can't help you." It's hard to feel like this is just a rough patch.
It is. And it's not just like they talk about immigrant crime and migrant crime. There was a lot of local crime going on because people really got the idea, especially kids driving cars through businesses and just looting them. They got the idea quick that there wasn't any enforcement. We're also dealing with squatters just taking over people's homes in really nice, affluent neighborhoods, and the police saying it's a civil matter. We can't do anything about it. And if you looked at our previous videos, we lost our home to crime. So it was a guy who was, American born, had over 20 felonies on record, and he was courting a family member who lied to the insurance company and the police to protect her boyfriend, despite the fact that all of the indicators were on our side. We were told, courts are full, there's nothing we can do. And so at the end of this house sale, which he destroyed, we had to pay $67,000 out of pocket to get rid of a house that was appraised just before this guy destroyed it at $460,000. So do the math there. $67,000 plus $460,000 is how much we lost in assets this last year. And then we just sold everything and donated everything, donated our car, clothing, everything. We have suffered hundreds of thousands of dollars just in the last 2 years. And we didn't have a choice but to leave, because if you live in a place with this little enforcement, you have to leave, because we figured, well, if it's not our stuff, it's going to be us next.
And this isn't just numbers. It's an indication of a nation that's pulling in multiple directions and being pulled apart.
Yeah.
Younger men feel left out of the culture. Older women are voting their fears, and I don't blame them. And the middle generations, they're just trying to hang on. They're still the working generations that have to go to work every day and face everything on the highways, on the sidewalks, and in their businesses.
So yeah, now that you've said that, let's get into the generations, because this is a generational podcast. So we did look at the demographics of the 2024 presidential election between Harris and Trump. And it really revealed how divided America is. And we're going to get into those demographics. So here's the breakdown. So Gen Z men, they came out and overwhelmingly supported Trump. They were likely influenced by social media, podcasts, other kind of like shock jock influencers. And that really played into their frustrations because they don't feel like they're very involved. Gen Z women came out in droves for Kamala Harris, and they voted for progressive policies that they would believe would lead to change. They also voted for their health care because there's over 30 states where all of that was taken away. Then let's go into millennial men. Now, millennial men, surprisingly, also got on board the Trump train. They tapped into the fears about the economy, their future, crypto, things like that. And we talked to a few of them in tech that actually were very highly educated, and they said, Biden's not doing anything for me. So we thought that was sad. Then we got to millennial women, and like 2020, we all came out for Harris because we saw the writing on the wall. We don't want our healthcare taken away, our rights taken away. You know, we are secondhand citizens if we don't have the same rights and statutes as males. And so we saw this happening and we came out. Unfortunately, Gen X and boomers, the men overwhelmingly backed Trump, while women were split and they slightly leaned toward Harris. And that was kind of shocking. And the silent generation was pretty much 50-50. So if you think about it, it was like Gen X was this far apart with men and women. Then we got to the millennials. Then we got to the Gen Xers. Then we got to the boomers. Then we got to the silent generation. So it was like a Christmas tree. And the younger, the more farther apart the I would say the division was. So I thought that was interesting. And let's not forget about education. If you had a college degree or greater, you voted for Harris, pretty much up and down the board. If you had a high school education or lower, you came out for Trump. Now, I'm not speaking for everybody, but that was the demographics that we read. Additionally, this is probably the most surprising demographic that we saw, and that was an overwhelming support for Trump from the Hispanic community, including undocumented immigrants. So we didn't really understand that until we talked to a few of them, and they liked his machismo. They liked his power. They liked the fact that he was like, oh, he's a big, strong man, and he can represent us. And they didn't like Harris because they thought she was soft. So there's a little bit of misogyny going there, and it really does point out the patriarchy of what we're seeing in America, which in my opinion isn't great. In addition to that, Black voters came out overwhelmingly for Harris because they can see the writing on the wall. They've been through this rodeo before. And I believe it was like over 92% of Black women, I mean, it was just through the roof, showed up in droves to elect Harris. But it wasn't enough. So now we're dealing with a very divided country. And again, this is not a channel about politics. We're here to just share what we're findings and what we're seeing. But we can see why either side voted for the other, okay? And the reason we say that is we believe that Harris would have been a slow collapse and Trump is like ripping off the Band-Aid. So something drastic needs to happen in America. And I think a lot of people are going to suffer until they realize that they've made a mistake, and they've made a lot of mistakes along the way. And that goes for both the Democrat and the Republican Party. So now let's look into why America is a victim of class warfare. Now, America is a victim of class warfare. And here's the truth. We are being gaslit by our own leadership, while billionaires and soon to be trillionaires are siphoning up all of our wealth and assets.
The rest of us are living paycheck to paycheck. Some of us are drowning in student and other debt. And the narrative is always, oh, don't worry, we got this.
You know, we believe that integrity, it starts with facing reality. And the reality is our system is not broken. It's actually working perfectly. And that's for the elites and the people at the top. And they're really loving it. Whether they're Democrat or Republican, they're making a lot of money off of us. This is not a culture war. This is a class war. They want you to think it's a culture war because that pits you all against each other while they do this. This is the billionaire class and their plan for us. Social Security, gone. Healthcare, who needs that? Affordable housing, we'll just put you in these tiny little apartments that we're building everywhere. And if you can't afford them because you don't work for our corporation or our factory, you can live on the streets, which we're actually seeing in the Seattle area now. I think we went up to 18% just in the last year in homelessness. Education, nah, we want you stupid. Wage laws, no more minimum wage, even though that wasn't a living wage to begin with. Consumer price controls, nope, here come the tariffs. Environmental protections, we're just going to pollute the planet, get rid of all the laws. Banking laws, Civil rights, nope. Basic freedoms, gone. Now they're already gone or they're on the chopping block in the next couple of years, which is another reason why we moved.
And what about the idea, now the illusion of entitlement? What we used to call 40-40. You work 40 hours a week for 40 years, and boom, you have a wonderful retirement.
Yeah.
Still waiting.
Well, your generation got to experience a lot of that, and that's why so many millennials are upset with boomers, and why so many Gen Zers are upset with Gen Xers, because we feel like, okay, well, welcome to the party. You're now starting to see what we've been going through. And you're very unique in that you've always been a contract worker, and you had really, really hard luck in the stock market in 2008, which brought you down to millennial status. So you had to work your bum off just like we had and reallocate your wealth, and not you lost all your wealth. You had to learn a new skill and get back into the workplace. So that's what makes Jonathan a little different. He didn't get to keep his retirement, his stocks, his pension. They were all taken in 2008, that big stock market crash. So that's what makes him a little more empathetic toward us. But I'd like to just kind of call it as it is. We saw this firsthand just in the last year, especially since COVID. We lost our home. We lost our jobs. We watched our friends lose their jobs. I talked about the tech community earlier. They were all priced out. They're talking about the abuse of the H-1B program, and you're bringing in all these immigrants. They brought them in during COVID, and they're not the skilled workers that we were working with. We can't understand why they're here and what they're doing because they never leave the house. And they don't appear to have many skills. We go out with our little dog, and it's like there's just no connection there. So we also watched a lot of seniors lose their homes and end up in their cars because they had to choose their prescriptions over rent and over food, which we think is horrifying. So if you're living in an area that's supposed to be affluent and you have to choose whether or not you're going to go homeless or whether you're going to eat, that's a major problem, and that's not what the American dream is about, and that's not what our country stood for or should stand for. So let's go into why we see hypocrisy on both sides. Both parties are failing us. Democrats, they preach a lot of progress. Oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, but they turn a blind eye to their own hypocrisies. If you feel a little abandoned by the Democratic Party, you're not alone, we do too. They stop standing up for our most basic rights and freedoms. And one example that we can point to, I've already covered this, is the abuse of the H-1B program. And Bernie Sanders actually brought this to the attention of a lot of people in the last week. And we saw, like we said, a massive spike in tech layoffs during COVID. And this was followed by immigrants and their families moving into our apartment building by the droves. And it became so concentrated that we counted as many as 12 people living in a one-bedroom apartment. And you could tell by the slippers outside the door, the noise, mats on the floor. And, if you said anything about it, especially to leadership or other people, you were deemed, racist or uncaring, and, you're just not being sympathetic. And it's like, well, say that when you're being replaced by someone who is used to being mistreated and abused by employers in their country. And unlike US workers, they don't have the protections that we have as Americans. So Democrats allowed this corporate slavery to happen right under our noses. And this was under the guise of identity politics. And we were shamed for telling people this isn't right. You can't treat workers like this. So a lot of us lost our jobs to people who were willing to accept a third of the pay, no medical, company-owned cars that they didn't keep, buildings that they lived in that they didn't own, and all of the people with expensive educations and certifications and student loans were just left with debt at the end of this and no jobs. So it was just another 2008 during COVID, especially in the tech world. Did you notice that too, Jonathan?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We shared our experiences here in Mexico with some folks that we know from
the area that we came from.
The area that we came from in the United States.
Yeah.
And I was surprised at their reaction, would be an understatement. Mm-hmm. They basically looked us straight in the face and said, "You're lying."
Yep, they didn't believe us.
It can't possibly be that. I have to admit, that was my opinion through this whole thing too. I cannot believe what I'm seeing with my own eyes, experiencing in our own lives. Somebody has to come in and say, wait a minute, blow the whistle. Yep. Everybody stop. This isn't right. That didn't happen. The folks here had already left the country, so they had the memories of when things worked. And the point of this is that the way things worked and the way they are now is so far apart. It is hard to believe that it could have happened just like that. Mm-hmm. And it did.
Yeah.
We lived in the area for 6, 7 years.
Mhm.
It was the last 18 months when the really, 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 the tidal wave of people came
It's
crashing in.
egregious.
Yeah, just filled up all the apartments, filled up the streets.
There were people in tents. We were buying socks and underwear for the Venezuelan kids that were literally dying in tents in the cold. It was horrifying.
People living in the Pacific Northwest in a really rough winter. It did snow, it got below freezing.
Yeah.
In tents with children.
Hmm.
In the
And they were putting these people to work, and they were living in tents in church parking lots. It was horrifying.
So it occurred to us that, again, how are the corporations who's doing this?
Yes.
How are these people getting away with this? And the idea is it is too egregious to believe.
Mhm.
It is too completely just outrageous to think that the corporations are importing people by the thousands and
Millions.
dumping them in the middle of the society
Mhm.
for the effect that it has.
They don't want to pay their workers.
And honestly, if we hadn't had the experiences that we had directly in that
Mhm.
community, and somebody came to me and said, "Hey, blah blah blah," I probably would have told them they were lying, because my experience in that area was highly trained, highly educated people with degrees and
Yep.
experience and previous jobs, and generally, traditional family, husband, wife, 1 or 2 kids, all going to school, all with jobs.
Mhm.
To take that and flip it 180 degrees in a matter of a couple of years in a very, very tightly controlled area with laws and progressive ideas,
Mhm.
it's almost impossible to believe. So I do understand their reaction. The trouble is that reaction does not correspond to reality.
And just to give you guys a little background, Jonathan's not your average Joe. He worked in the city council, he worked with the Historic Preservation Council, he worked with the neighborhood council. If there was a council, he was on it. And so to see the changes and the laws being broken, that was a lot. And so we talked about the Democrats. What about the Republicans?
Let's just say they're not as disturbed by this because a lot of them own either shares in companies or companies that are, let's just say, benefiting from this.
Mhm.
Labor has gone way down. The cost of labor has gone way down. Now, again, somebody that doesn't have a college education, maybe not even much traditional school education, is not going to be a computer programmer.
But if they're willing to work for a third of the salary and they know a little bit, then it's better than paying someone 3 times the salary with all those certifications and, require, like, for instance, all of the credentials that would cost a lot of money traditionally, basically. And it's like, I'd say about 1 immigrant worker is worth, like 3 immigrant workers is worth 1, would you say? Like we were looking at the salaries?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that, not everybody in a tech company is sitting at a high-power computer creating code in their head and blasting out the next operating system. A lot of it is just regular company work, moving things from A to Z,
Mhm.
going out, picking up shipping supplies, putting things in boxes, labeling them, that sort of thing.
Mhm.
So if all of a sudden the work market is overflowing with people, it drives the average salary down.
And another thing I noticed is the Republicans completely abandoned law and order because they are profiting from the chaos. So now I'm going to get into Christian leadership because, as many of you guys know, I was raised Catholic, Christian. I consider myself to be a very spiritual person. I love Jesus. And I've never seen the Christian people become so immoral over profits just in the last 10 years. I mean, it is insane what they're willing to just excuse to make that extra buck. So I remember back, 20 years ago when I was going to church and sitting down, it was illegal for nonprofits and religious organizations to basically campaign from the pulpit. And I remember religious leaders literally saying, well, we can't tell you who to vote for, but they would nudge us a little bit. But they didn't say it out loud. Now the churches are stating who their parishioners need to vote for, and it's egregious to the point where families are getting divided over this. So I thought that was kind of sad. Now let's get into healthcare and economic red flags. Now, healthcare in America is like playing Russian roulette. That's our experience. And it comes down to whether or not your particular insurer is going to cover you. Will you get the care you need? And after the United Healthcare death, that really brought a lot of the issues with our system to light. And people were coming out in droves claiming family members and they themselves were casualties of a really broken system.
And this is something that I have some direct experience with since I'm Medicare age and started to have some symptoms and went to a doctor and was diagnosed with an age-related condition, let's call it, and said, okay, well, we have a treatment for that and it costs this much per treatment. We expect there'll be 12 treatments, and it was basically
$17,000 a month, and that was after his insurance paid for it.
Yeah.
For months.
Not quite the Medicaid experience I was expecting.
Medicare, but
Medicaid.
that's different.
Yeah. So the idea that you can rely on these processes and systems that have been in place for a long time doesn't seem to be making it through to the new millennial. There's no way that we could have paid the amount of money that's being quoted to us for the treatment, which, by the way, is not 100% guaranteed to work. It's just the only treatment that's available that seems to have more benevolent than malefic results.
And just to let you guys know, we also had private insurance. We had dental insurance, we had eye, we had additional insurances that we were paying into in addition to Medicare. Medicare was just a backup for us. So for him, because I don't qualify. But for instance, when we went in for your dental work, most of that was also out of pocket, and we were paying hundreds of dollars a month to help finance this, and we just kept getting every single claim denied. And I had been paying into this dental program for years, and we qualified for the top tier, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, we don't cover this. Oh, we don't cover. Oh, there's grafting involved, and I'm like, well, it says it right here on the list that that's covered. Oh, no, that's special. No, this is the exact thing that our dentist put in, and we actually saw multiple insurance agents that were working for dentists and I guess representatives quit because they said there's just no point. Like, my job is useless. They're just going to deny every claim. So we understand a lot of the angst when it comes to the medical system here and how it's being run. And just to let you guys know, if you come and see a doctor here in Mexico, it's $40. Just do the math on that. It's insane.
And they're an actual MD.
Yeah.
In my experience, you don't always see an MD when you go to the doctor in the States. You might see a medical assistant. You might see just an advisor. You might see someone who brings out a sheaf of documents, and all of a sudden you realize you're being pitched for a payment plan.
Yeah.
They're not talking about your health plan. They're talking about a payment plan, which is thousands of dollars a month spread over months and years to cover the treatment that they're prescribing.
It should be covered by insurance, right? No. So that was another main thing that we think caused a big rift in our relationship with America as a country. Now I'm going to get a little bit into the economy, and I did a little research on this so that all you fact checkers out there don't ding me. So there's a lot of stock market instability, especially with the new crypto announcements coming out. And if you think your savings are safe, think again. I read that top U.S. banking executives expect the Trump's administration to ease banking regulations. What does that look like? That's going to loosen capital requirements and streamline mergers. That can spur a lot of growth for the top, but it weakens safeguards like the FDIC, and that's what is protecting all of our deposits. Like, each person is insured for up to $250,000. They take that away, they can just come into your bank account and take it. So another thing that we're doing is we're trying to study what type of international investments that we want to make so that our investment doesn't go in a rocket to Mars or in a billionaire's pocketbook. And we don't want to walk up to our bank with a for rent sign outside and no way to get in, because that's not fun. And
that will ruin your whole day.
You think? So now let's go into why we left. leaving was not easy for us. We had to leave behind, friends, family, a lifetime of memories, but staying where we were was like watching a slow motion collapse. And, I've been suffering in the workforce since the 2008 recession. I had a full-time government position as a public school teacher. I worked double hours because I was journalism. I was a track coach, cross country. I was involved in a lot of different programs. I also did 7 periods a day. So I was making some pretty good money. I had excellent health care, for the time, especially now. And I had a retirement program set up. And 2008 recession hit. I lost that steady government job along with many, many millennials, and I'm sure all of you can relate to that. And I had to go into contract work, making less money. I took on 3 to 4 jobs at a time, and those jobs only covered my basic bills. And this was working pedal to the metal, getting tech certifications, really busting my bum. And I was told when I was younger, especially by my boomer parents, more education equals more income. But for millennials, if you're listening, you understand this, it just equaled more debt. And when we all lost our jobs after 2008, we faced a lot of economic hardship that I think led to a big rift between boomers and millennials. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I've been fighting the system, the big system, since I was a kid. I was 17 and the government came knocking on the door, not literally, but figuratively knocked on the door and said, hey, follow me. I'm going to give you an education. I'm going to train you and stuff. I'm going to feed you. I'm going to give you clothing.
Well, actually, there was a Vietnam lottery, and you were the third birthday that they announced.
Okay, yeah.
So it was like a bingo thing. We watched this. It's on YouTube. You guys can look it up. I'm not kidding. It was a literal bingo lottery, and they come up with birthdays. And December 30th was the third. That's his birthday. The third birthday that they announced.
So I didn't have to wait long.
No, no, you were drafted right away.
Right away.
Yeah.
And they were quick on the draw.
Oh, yeah.
Quick on the draw. I think they sent it by personal messenger. I got a notice, the proverbial draft notice that said, gather your gear and appear at this location at such and such a time.
Yeah.
But I read through the whole document, which I find is a really good idea when you get a document from the government. Read it all the way and look on the back. And so I challenged it for various reasons, went through the process, and basically I just tired them out and they said, go away.
Well, it was because, you tested really, really high in their cognitive programs, and they tried to get you into computers, and you ended up taking, he still served, but they put him alternative service because he tested so high on his exams. So he still served, but they said, this guy's not really made for the field. He's made to, deal with our computers, our electronic engineering, things like that. And he had a brother in the Navy who is also an electronic engineer as well. So you don't put the brains out on the front line. And that was kind of the attitude that they took after he sat across from them and spoke to them like adults as a 19-year-old boy. So, back then, those were a lot of millionaires getting together and throwing your generation into a meat grinder, which was Vietnam. And the reason they did that was because they wanted more money. So back then, there were millionaires. What do you see now?
Well, unfortunately, same thing, different day, and same type of money, only 6 more digits, 6 more zeros behind it. We're talking not billions any longer, folks. It's trillions.
Yeah.
Trillions of dollars going into programs that are being basically chewing up another generation.
Well, and if you guys look into it, there's a company called BlackRock. I don't know if you've seen them yet, but they have over $7 trillion in assets and holdings. And they backed the incoming administration. In fact, one of the people in the commercials was the kid that was on top of the roof that took a shot at Trump. You can look this up. He was in one of the commercials. So this just all stinks. It's really obvious to us what's going on. The people at the top are going to suck up everything and enslave us unless we get out of their way and we just try to be as free agent as possible. Now, Jonathan and I are lucky enough to where we have enough certifications in tech. We have enough skill sets to where we can travel and we can work pretty much anywhere. But not everybody has that. And that's where a lot of our worry comes from. So we hope that you're doing everything that you can to protect yourself, your families, and just kind of prepare for this shift that we see coming. And we're going to go into our future videos on how we can be an asset for you as we continue our own travels internationally as well. So now let's get into what's next for America, because that's what I think is on everybody's mind right now, because it just seems to be shifting on the daily. So what do you see, Jonathan?
Well, what it looks like, and again, I tend to look at the small writ large. This is essentially the same game plan. It's international, coordinated, economic warfare.
Yeah.
You come at me with this, I'll come at you with that. We'll both make a bunch of money, and then as long as you stay on that side of the line, I'll stay on this side of the line, and we'll all get really, really, really rich. The trouble is that the people that are playing this game are not even following those rules any longer. We're seeing the BRICS nations starting to.
And if you don't know what BRICS is, that's Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, and a number of other
those are the names
countries.
on the
Yeah,
building.
those are the main ones.
Yeah.
But they've taken over, like, I think all but Cambodia in Southeast Asia, large parts of Africa, and they account for what is like between 60 and 70% of the population now. So they've got the people, but they don't really have the economic numbers. So just to let you know, BRICS is, let's say, between 60 and 70% of the world population, and they hold about 23% of the world wealth. America is 4% of the world population and holds 26% of the world's wealth. So if you were BRICS and you were going after, let's say, the G7, which includes the United States and Europe, who would you want to take out? The people with the money, and you move your people in, and that's what we think is going on.
I probably started a while ago. They just sort of moved a company in and didn't quite have all the documentation, and just sort of said, but look at all the jobs we're bringing in. It's all about jobs here, jobs, 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 America. And they were allowed to do it. And that little...
And we let Russia into our stock market through oil and a bunch of other things.
Yeah, so they have infiltrated the economic system because they have enough money to do it. And the people here were saying, well, why can't they play in our game? Well, because the thing is, it's not a game for them, and they don't play fair. Monopolization is a rule. They don't just, coordinate the oil industry. They take over an industry, and that's kind of where we see things headed. So again, that's why we realized this game has no rules. If you have no rules, there's no way to even play the game, much less win the game. So, hence, here we are in Mexico, which we find is better economically, culturally, gastronomically. Our health is better.
It is. My skin looks amazing, and a little TMI, but I've struggled with IBS my whole life. I don't have that here because all of the fruits and vegetables, they're non-GMO. We get bottled water and stuff, but tough diff, we get really good food. I mean, the fruit tastes like fruit. The vegetables are like nothing I've ever tasted. It's fantastic. And the people, they are so polite. They are so sweet, but we are keeping our bags light because now the administration is talking about annexing Mexico, Canada, Greenland, Panama. And we're just looking at each other going, well, we were looking at Panama. We were looking at, these countries that he's now going after. We weren't looking at Greenland. I'll say that. I don't think Inuit culture would be really for Jonathan. He tends to run a little cold already. But we looked at a few of the countries that he's going for, including Canada, because we have a lot of friends up there. And now we're worried for them, especially after Justin Trudeau decided that he was going to leave. It's like, well, did someone sit down and talk to his family? We don't know what's going on there. But it's a little scary for North America. The whole Wolf of America thing. Geez. And now we've got the fires in California, and our hearts go out to those in LA who are losing their homes. And this administration is turning it into this horrible political statement that it's just horrifying. So I'm actually going to go into what we can expect for those who are staying in America, because we left. Okay, you guys are going to need to prepare yourselves because there's a lot coming. Now, if you've looked into this, the Heritage Foundation has been a thing that's been going around since the Reagan administration. It's been around for a long time, and it's kind of evolved over the years. It's got a lot of money behind it. And like I said, BlackRock is behind the Trump administration and a lot of these billionaires, which is most of the world's holdings. I mean, it's insane how much money these guys have. So I did some notes, and under Project 2025, this is what we can expect with the next administration. And this is all on their website. You can look it up. If you haven't read the form yet, I highly suggest that you do. If you're too lazy, just go into ChatGPT and say, give me some bulleted lists, okay? So we can expect cuts to Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, educational funding. There's going to be diminished labor protections and affordable housing programs. Civil liberties will face significant challenges. That's LGBTQ plus rights, freedom of speech, anti-discrimination protections. Tax cuts will only benefit corporations and the wealthy, while tariffs and deregulation will strain our household budgets even more. We bought 10 bags of groceries for $85 here in Mexico, and it was premium stuff. That would have cost us over $1,000 in the States. So we're already benefiting by leaving. And if you haven't already read Project 2025, we highly suggest that you do, because the deregulation of our infrastructure is really going to hurt a lot of people. So what else did you see in the coming out of this administration and Project 2025?
Apparently they went back into the archives and they looked around. I have to admit, this is a pretty good idea. If you want to control people, you look at an era when people were really rigidly controlled, and you see, okay, how they do that. And they found that a lot of the laws in these like 100-year ago periods were still on the books. Like raise your hand if you've ever heard of the Comstock Act.
I had to look it up.
Me too, because it was passed in 1873. 1873. Basically, it bans the mailing of anything considered obscene, and in 1873, it was a much broader definition than now. Birth control, abortion-related items, and what's deemed pornographic. Pornographic in 1870, there's an old song about a glimpse of stocking was considered shocking, you know. 1873, obscene was wearing ruffles around your skirt.
A lot of parts of women's health care was considered obscene, like access to birth control and birth control products of any kind.
So that can be used to control reproductive rights, medical processes.
It's already happening.
Yeah. So rights, and these rights being taken away affect everyone, not
Men
just
and women.
This is the reality we're facing, not the future we were promised.
Yeah. So I'm going to talk about another act that I had to look up, and this is the Alien Enemies Act of 1798. And this was so shocking to me that I stood across from our landlord and I had them put in a clause here in Mexico that we could break our lease in case the president of Mexico and or the government decided to kick out non-resident Americans, because this is nasty. This is real gross. Okay. It's going to strain our relationships with countries like Mexico and India, because they're targeting foreign nationals. So this is not based on residency. This is not based on citizenship. This is not based on laws. They go, you know what? You're Indian. We don't like you. You're Mexican. We don't like you. Leave. I call this the not seers party. They're not seeing reality. And this is going to damage our economic partnerships, you think? It is going to foster a lot of anti-American sentiment, and I don't blame them, because I think this is really racist and horrifying. And it's going to disrupt our workforce mobility, because there are a lot of jobs that people are not going to take that are classically held by immigrants that are here legally. So we have not decided to set down roots anywhere. We're keeping our bags light, and we're paying attention to the news, because we know that Americans will be targeted if our leadership steps out of bounds, especially with strong leaders like the woman of Mexico, who we respect and admire immensely. And we love the Mexican people as well. I do speak pretty okay Spanish. I understand it more than I speak it, and I plan on taking classes just to kind of up my chops. But we moved here because we really love this culture, but it's likely going to be under attack, especially with the talk of annexes in this horrible, horrible law. And you guys can look it up. Again, it's called the Alien Enemies Act of 1798. 1798. It was put forth by John Adams. So it's just madness. So that's where we're at there. So now let's go into, what we think is coming. What can you do? Start by waking up to the truth. The storm is here, and you either have to prepare, batten down the hatches, and start protecting your family, or you need to make a very mitigated plan to leave, like we did.
You also need to tell your stories. You need to build a community, just a neighborhood. You're living near some people. That's not a community. That's just, residential. Find people in the residential area that are of like mind and start talking about this. Build that community. Someone's going to have to do it. It might as well be you. And I know from experience, when you start talking about this with people, some people will go, I'm not interested in that. Other people will go, what? Where did you find that out? So text me where you got that, because they're worried too. There are more people like that than you might imagine. And share your experiences, good and bad. You found a way to, circumvent some of the restrictions that are coming. Trust me, they're coming. Buy in bulk, start a community garden, do these things.
Rely on your neighbors. They tried to keep us separated for a reason. So we got to come out of our little COVID hidey holes and really start to support each other. And that's why we started this channel. We started this so that we could reach out and create an online community of people that are looking to leave or people that are staying that need resources. And we're already a part of a couple of groups that are getting together and working together to start these neighborhood, alliances, these expat alliances, so that we can keep each other safe and informed. And again, we are not a political channel. We're here to support everyone from the billionaire and trillionaire class. That's pretty much why we started this. And this is not about survival. This is not just about survival, I should say. This is more. This is about creating a future that works for everyone and not just the elite, because this is a class war that we're set to lose if we continue to let this happen and we just sit on our laurels and go, oh, well, I guess they have all the money and we have to do what they say. No, we can take action. We can stand up for ourselves and our communities. So I'm kind of pleading with you to set down the politics, set down the generational differences, set down any racial discriminations that you might have carried around or gotten from your family, any issues that you might have with migrants or immigrants, any issues you may have with gender or sexual orientation. Put them down, because winter is coming. This reminds me of Game of Thrones, when the Winter King killed her dragon. And long story short, they were all, okay, I don't know if you've seen Game of Thrones, it's one of my favorite series. But all of these tribes were fighting over petty things. And meanwhile, this horde of zombie demons were headed toward basically destroy the world. That's what's coming. So we need to join forces. We need to create alliances, and we need to work together. And if you like what we're saying, if you want to get on board, we ask that you subscribe, visit our website. It's www.theboomermill.live. Our email is there. Our social media is there. We're here to support you. And now this is a little more doom and gloom of a show. We're going to have much nicer broadcasts in the future. We're going to be talking about things like groceries and where we're traveling, and travel plans and points, and where to bank and how to protect yourselves. And we're going to be very expat driven, but we also have a lot of friends that are still in the States, and we're going to be talking about what they're going through and what they're doing in their communities to support each other. Because I just want to reiterate, this is not a drill. So if you're staying put, create a community around you. And if you're leaving, you need to prepare wisely. And we hope to be a resource for you moving forward, and that you can join our team.
And the first step you need to take is to throw off the shackles, which is the news media, and live in reality. And reality means look around, use your senses, talk to people directly, and draw conclusions from the information you're seeing. Now, this isn't always easy, and it's going to take a little time. But, honestly, your experiences may vary, but what we're seeing is widespread deterioration of social structures, and people are shutting down. They're not opening up. They're not talking to each other. They're just going into their houses and hoping that it gets better. that's not going to work as a survival skill. When when winter comes, you don't want to be sitting in the dark with one candle and a box of crackers.
Yeah.
You want to be on the dragons headed toward, warmth. So share your experiences, share your story, and we're all stronger together than we are separately. We can create the change. We can bridge this generational and social gap, one conversation at a time. And this is our conversation with you.
And that's why we started this channel. I'm a millennial, Jonathan's a boomer, and it took him a while to see eye to eye, but he did, given his background. And we hope that we can, again, bridge that gap together. So I did create a poem that I'm going to end the show with. And it's a little bleak. And again, I promise that our future shows are going to be a little lighter and brighter. But I was inspired to write it because I believe that this is kind of the future that we're headed toward. And y'all need to know what's going on. So please please subscribe. We really look forward to connecting with you in the future. And we wish you all the best and safety into 2025. We're sending peace.
I stand stone-bound, my torch gone dim, once aglow for the weary, lost in the grim. No more do I cry, come find hope at my shore, for those tired hearts seek freedom no more. Where once in harbor I opened the door, now shadows loom where light shone before. My hand that lifted, a guide through the storm, now lies still, caught in a chill, no longer warm. I watched as the rights that once were bright fell silent beneath an eclipse of night. No tired, no poor come yearning to be, only fear drifts on the winds of the sea. My lips stay closed, no welcome they sing, as malice and loss wrap round like a ring. Here in my stillness a sorrow runs deep, for the freedoms once cherished now lay asleep.